think we've got everyone in the room, and obviously we've got people who will be watching this retrospectively. So welcome to everyone. Thanks so much for joining on a Thursday evening. It's a bit of a road time for a webinar, I know. So we've switched it up today or tonight. So hello everyone in there. I won't call you out by name, but great to see you all as we are. I'm joined by our co-founder and, well, CEO. You hate being called CEO, don't you, Glenn? But our co-founder, Glen Hare, Financial Advisor of the Year from 2024-25. Glenn, how you doing?
Very well, mate. It's been a long day, but feeling pretty good.
Well, we're here now, mate. Best part of the day. Let's make it.
And
Let's
I've
make
got my
it.
cup of tea to keep me warm, so I can't complain.
Beautiful, beautiful. For context, everyone, my name is Will. I'm the Member Success Manager here at Fox and Hare. Today, what are we going to be doing? So we're actually going to be simulating one of the first sessions that you would have as a full Fox and Hare member, and that's called the cash flow structuring session or the cash flow session. We're going to dive into what that means in a second. But for a bit of context, that isn't the first meeting you would ever have with us. We don't immediately dive into the spreadsheets. The first session, for context, would be a full 45 to an hour consultation with myself, then an hour and a half with your advisor after we've paired you with the right one. And it's only after that point you decide, yeah, this feels right for us, that we would then get stuck into the numbers. And that's what we're going to be talking through today. So I will be acting today as someone who is going through this journey for the first time. I'm a new Fox and Hare member, and I'm imagining that Glenn is my advisor who is helping me set up my cash flow. Glenn, we're going to use that term a lot today, cash flow, but in layman's terms, what does that actually mean?
In short, is how you manage your income at a either individual level or a household level, how you manage your expenses, so what you're spending on a day-to-day basis, bills, things like that, and what you do with what's left over. So that surplus cash flow is really the enabler to what all of our members look to achieve, regardless of whether it's purchasing property, buying a house, starting a family, generating passive income. It's that cash flow element that's the driver.
Okay, and why is it so important that this is the first session rather than jumping straight into things like investing or super?
Mm. It's interesting. Like those that reach out to us, no one reaches out to us for a budget. That's not why they reach out to us. They reach out to us because they want to purchase property, they want to look to start a family, they want to generate a passive income, through investments, things like that. But the reality is, unless we have an understanding of one, what the income is, two, what the expenses are, and then subsequently three, what is left over at the end of each month, it gives us no clarity as to when or if we're able to achieve those goals.
Okay, so today is basically laying the foundation by which
Yeah,
all of the decisions that I'm going to make would be based on what I would.
exactly right.
Okay, okay.
Exactly right.
Okay, so for those listening and those watching retrospectively, if you're someone who feels like you're earning a good income but you're not sure where it's going, or you look back at how much you've earned in your career, a lot of money, and then potentially don't feel like we've actually got a lot, or
Mm,
maybe those goals like owning a property just always somehow feel a bit out of reach, then this one's for you. Cool.
perfect.
In terms of what we're going to do, I'm now going to get into being me as someone that might be going through this journey for the first time. Glenn, we have sent to everyone, and if you haven't received it, please let us know. But we've sent you each what we call just a cash flow spreadsheet. So that's what we're going to spend a lot of the bulk of today in is the numbers and how we actually structure these different bank accounts, for example, so that
Mm.
we can provide everyone here with sort of tangible actions that they can make themselves rather than having to use financial advice specifically to do that. But in a nutshell, Glenn, what's like the key takeaway that we're trying to get from the end of the session for people watching?
Structure. So the more structure, the more discipline, the more control you have over how you manage your finances, the greater the degree of freedom, flexibility, and choice you're going to have in the future. So at the end of this evening session, if you've got clarity in terms of what your income is, you've got clarity around how to manage your day-to-day expenses, and you've got a little bit of an insight in terms of what to do with whatever's left over at the end of each month, that is a great outcome.
Okay, so we're helping arm people here with the ability to use their incomes as best as they can and then be able to make subsequent decisions based on that there.
Exactly. I'm going to preface that for the lawyers that are on the call that this is all general in nature. We haven't taken into account your personal circumstances. So obviously, use the information the general information that we share with you today and adapt it based on where you're at.
Great, perfect. Well, without further ado, then, shall we get stuck into it?
Let's get cracking.
For a bit of pre-warning as well, guys. This will probably take us about half an hour or so, and then we'll leave a good bit of time for questions, either as we go or towards the end. But I have prepared some anticipating the sorts of questions that you might be asking. So if you do feel a little bit scared to drop one in the chat, please don't be. But also we'll have time to address them.
Yeah, a really, really good call out. So as the questions come to mind, feel free to pop them in the chat. Will and I will see them come through. We'll address them at the time if relevant. If not, we can address at the end or certainly come back to you after this evening's session.
Perfect. Great.
So,
Let's get into
shall we get into it? Cool.
Let's do it.
So we are going to make this a pretty practical session. So literally going into the detail and in terms of how to build a cash flow strategy right from the outset. So I'm going to share my screen and Liam has or will already send you through the spreadsheet that I'll be referencing this evening. And the objective of this is to be used as a tool. Right? A tool to start building out the foundation of a really clear financial strategy. And again, just to talk through some of the practicalities around this, we don't want to leave things to chance. Like if you're looking to work towards a property, the more clarity you have in terms of how much you can save is going to give you more clarity on when you'll be able to purchase that. If you're looking to pay down debt, if you're looking to generate a passive income, this is the backbone that's going to facilitate that. So we'll touching on the spreadsheet that we've got here. So these are some of the numbers that you've shared with me. So what I'm seeing here is that your gross income is 135. So your take home pay on a fortnightly basis, what you're telling me is $3,894. That's the amount that's dropping into your bank account.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. So from a practical perspective, again, for those joining us, what we're looking to do here when using this spreadsheet is populating the numbers in column C, and then the frequency is in column F. So all of these numbers here are formulas, so there's no need for you to adjust any of those. If you're being paid on a monthly basis and it's on a monthly basis, you receive, $5,000 per month, you would just be updating that and then putting that $5,000 in on a monthly basis, and this will all calculate accordingly. So income, pretty straightforward. Do you have any other sources of income?
No, I don't. We've gone nice and simple for today.
Nice and simple. Beautiful.
Yeah.
The next section is fixed costs. So these are all of the non-negotiables. So regardless of whether they are paid weekly, fortnightly, monthly, annually, etc., what you're telling me here is that there's rent weekly, electricity monthly, internet monthly, utilities, streaming, mobile monthly, gym weekly, rego also accounted for. No car insurance, a bit risky. No car insurance, mate.
Yeah, maybe I've missed that one, mate. We should probably pop that one in there, shouldn't we?
So how much are you paying for the car?
Oh, too much. Money pit that. What is it? It's just over it's about 150 a year. Yeah, 1,150. So we'll whack one in there. That was kind of,
Cool.
I think, a really good call out there was just understanding like how much money actually something on a weekly or a monthly basis adds up to over the course of the year. And I think maybe just worth highlighting here is it's showing you exactly what each of those expenses and costs you have actually means for, at the end of the year. Then that's quite an eye-opening experience for someone doing it the first time to see like, oh, I didn't know that was actually how much that translates to.
Yeah, really good call out. And what we want to be doing and what we'll be building out is a strategy that ensures that when that annual car insurance premium comes through, you're not like, oh, where do I get that money from? It's about building a strategy that ensures that we're putting aside, the $22 or the $95 per month so that when the bill comes, it's already been accounted for and addressed.
Yeah, just on that point, Glenn, I think it's
Yeah,
important
man.
that let's imagine that the reason I'm here is because I'm someone that has struggled previously to anticipate costs that are coming up. I'm one of those people
Mm-mm.
who feels like I'm earning a good income, but it always feels like there's another expense. And just doing this exercise, I think, is a really good way to, through a structured way, help me anticipate those just by themselves.
Cool. Any health insurance, personal insurance that we need to account for?
I pay $70 a month for some very bad personal health insurance.
Health insurance. All right.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Anything else so just to be really clear, Will, so the bills are fixed costs, like non-negotiables. Is there anything else
I think that's a
that,
good capture of it. There's probably a bit of petrol in there. I've got a car, which I don't use that often, but I guess I would spend, let's whack in like 60 or something like that a week. 40, yeah. 50, we'll go 50. Yeah.
okay.
Cool.
So so if we recap where we're at now, so we've got income. So on a monthly basis, we've got about $8,500 of income. What this is telling me on a monthly basis is your fixed costs or your bills, just
Mm.
using round numbers, are about 3.5 grand. So there's $5,000 every single month going somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's figure out where it's going, shall we?
So weekly spending. So this is just all the random bits and pieces. Hair and beauty, 150. Sure, you spend more than that.
Haircuts in Bondi,
Um,
mate. To look this bad, it's
it's
expensive.
ridiculous. Dental, doctors. What about groceries? You haven't put anything. Have you put anything for groceries? No.
I thought I'd put in like $200 a week in there. I eat quite a lot, so I'd put in, yeah, just the
200
200.
bucks a week. All
Yeah,
right.
probably more realistically like 250. My closest
Jesus.
supermarket is Woolies, and they rinse me every time I go in there. So yeah, 250, I think.
Cool. Dental, clothes, 400 bucks a year. Does
Yeah,
that feel?
I'm a minimalist, mate. I don't spend a whole lot on clothes. Maybe I should probably spend a bit more, but we'll see what my checks out and if I can afford to do that.
All right. Maybe cut down on the chicken and go
Yeah,
and buy
maybe
some more clothes.
chicken and rice and go.
Um, Coffee is cool. So the purpose of this is, look, to be really frank, Will, I don't really care what you spend your money on a weekly basis. The reason why I've asked you to do this exercise is to work out on a weekly basis what's an appropriate figure that you're comfortable with spending on a weekly basis. So if I look at all of these figures, this is telling me, and if I look at the frequency, this is telling me that on a weekly basis, you're spending about $820 per week. Does that sound about right to you?
That's probably realistic. Yeah, at times I've tried to budget less, but I end up
Mm,
kind of dipping into it a bit more. So that probably is the average realistic figure. Yeah, I'd say so.
okay. So if we just to comment on that, so looking under the hood of a lot of people's finances, given demographic, income, household makeup, things like that, that's definitely on the higher end. So this is something that I'd want us to consider, potentially pulling back on. It needs to be a figure that you're comfortable with. It needs to be a realistic figure. But also, I am mindful, and we'll get to this in a moment, but the impact that that may have on, some of the goals that may be important to you. And thinking about that $800 figure, like if you were to reduce that to $600 per week, just as an example, that's an extra $10,000 per year. $10,000 per year over 5 years, that's $50,000. That's 10% deposit on a $500,000 investment property, and it's 200 bucks a week. So don't need to make any decisions yet, but just talking through the compounding impact of that can be quite
Mm.
considerable. The last is the bigger ticket items, so holidays and I guess large lifestyle expenses. So I would like for us to account for this. Travel is something that's so important to many of our members, and I know it's important to you. I don't want us to be saving towards, XY goal, but then taking the funds out to travel. I want to go, yep, we're saving towards these goals, and we've also accounted for the fact that we are going to be putting funds aside for travel. Just thinking about the coming 12 months,
Yeah.
how much would you like us to attribute towards
I
travel?
think a realistic one, I've got to pack back for a wedding each year to the UK. I'm in that kind of phase at the minute. So I'd
Mm.
probably say realistic. I'd spend 2 to 3 weeks back in Europe almost every year. But when I'm there, I'm not mental with it. So probably about 7.5 is probably I could do it within that, I think.
Okay, so 7.5 grand per over the next year. Are there any other random big expenses that are coming up? Like, do you need to buy a new couch? Do you need to buy, like, is there significant birthdays? Is there anything unexpected that we can try and account for to the best of our ability?
I don't think there's anything on the horizon, but there is always maybe a golf membership is probably in there.
All
So
right.
let's
How
put
much
a
is
grand
golf
for
these
that.
days?
Well, a membership typically around Sydney is like $1,000 for like one of the average courses, I think.
Like
We're not,
I have no idea. Is that like per
well, for a
month or
year,
per
for a year,
for
for a
a
year.
year? All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. We're not talking Royal Sydney, so
All right. Golf. I'll just meet you at the golf club after, mate. I'm not,
okay.
I'm
Well,
not interested. So that's $1,000 per year. So I put that as a fixed cost. So that's an annual cost
yeah.
that you're going to be hit
Okay.
up on an annualized basis. I've put that as a fixed cost. So we've accounted for income. We know exactly how much we're earning. We know what our bills are again. So this is 3.5 grand of our 8.5 grand income that is telling us these are non-negotiables, right? Like these expenses will come out of your bank account before you even get out of bed. We're spending about $800 per week on stuff. So this is no bills. This is just clothes, booze, groceries, eating out, random bits and pieces. And then we'll need to put aside about $600 on travel. Okay. So if I then, and for those on the call, what we've done here is we've clearly categorized the income as well as the expenses. And on the second tab that you would have received on the spreadsheet, it's going to give you a consolidated view. Okay, so this is just pulling the data from this this sheet and then summarizing it for you. So what we've got here is the income, the fixed costs, the weekly spending, and the lifestyle amount. The surplus. So Will, this is telling me that we then on a monthly basis have about $850 per week to drive towards your goals, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
Um, just love to check in with you at this point. How does that feel?
I think it's kind of mixed feelings at the minute. I think this is the first time that when I put put all of my costs in, it's the first time I'm clearly getting visibility of like just how much I'm spending on things, and that in itself is a useful exercise to me to be like, shit, I didn't know that was actually translating into that much money. But how does that make me
Mm,
feel? I think there's room for improvement based on now looking at what those expenses are,
mm,
and you're right calling out, an average of $820 a week is a lot.
mm.
Being a single person in Sydney and Bondi particularly is not inexpensive, but I do appreciate there are sacrifices or things that I could maybe cut down on, which would change that monthly surplus, right?
Yeah. So let's unpack that a little bit further. So I'm not interested in kind of just reducing weekly spending for the sake of reducing weekly spending, right? Like going, oh, let's just reduce 800 down to 700 because that's the right thing to do from a financial perspective. Any financial decisions that we make need to be driven by goals. The clearer your goals are, then the more clarity I'm going to be able to give you as to whether one, they're achievable, or two, the time frame associated with the high likelihood of achieving those goals. So just thinking about the next, let's just call it the next 12 months to kind of 5 years, kind of short to medium term, are there any specific goals that you're working towards?
Well, I think one of the key ones kind of I want in that midterm range is purchasing a home or a property.
Okay.
kind of one of the ones I wanted to unpack was like a 5-year goal of either being in or owning investment property as we
Yep.
go as we do that.
Cool. Have you given any considerations to how much that might cost?
Yes, and the problem is I live in Sydney and the prices are mental. So I think that's part of what I want to figure out is like, is that actually a realistic goal? So I think at minimum it would be, a 1 or 2 bedroom flat there, which Sydney actually, in and around that area is minimum probably 7 to 800,000, maybe
Mhm.
like in 5 years' time.
Yep. Cool. So let's just use some round number. Let's just go $800,000. So in order for you to purchase that property,
Mm.
we need to be thinking about, okay, well, how much do we need to be putting aside for the deposit? So this is where the cash flow, regardless, again, for those that joined us this evening, regardless of the position that you're in, the purpose of utilizing this example, that's a really good example, Will, is to think about, okay, well, what's the goal and then how do we work backwards from that? The same applies if you're looking to pay down debt. The same applies if you're looking to, invest and generate a certain level of passive income. The same applies if you're looking to inevitably retire early. So just using your goal, Will. So $800,000 property. Let's say we're working towards a $80,000 deposit. So I'll share my screen again. So $80,000 deposit. So if we're saving $847 per month, so that's going to take 800. I'm just going to say 850. That's going to take us 94 months, which is nearly 8 years to get
Mm.
that $80,000 deposit. If I look at where there's opportunity here, and again, we encourage everyone on the call to be, looking at this genuinely as an opportunity. Your income, Will's 8.5, your bills are 3.5. Like looking at that from a kind of a ratio perspective, that's a considerable disposable income. That's $5,000 every single month. Where we have the opportunity here to readjust or pivot is one, how much we're spending on chicken breasts and protein shakes,
Yeah.
and how much we're spending on travel. All right. So if I use the weekly budget as an example, and we pulled back on that, we said, all right, we're not going to spend 820, we're going to spend 600. We've then nearly tripled our savings from, well, just over 2.5 times our savings. So we've gone from $800, 850, up to nearly $2,000 per month. So if I ran the same numbers and said, okay, we need 80 grand, which is a 10% deposit on an $800,000 property, and we're now saving $1,800 per month, it's not taking us 8 years to purchase that $800,000 property. We're now purchasing it in 3.5.
Okay, so just by changing my habits on a weekly basis and getting that structure in, I've half the time to purchase the same property that I wanted, essentially.
Correct.
Sweet.
We're still spending, just to be really clear about that, we're still spending in this example $7,500 on travel. So if you looked at these numbers and you said, yeah, Glenn, that looks good, but I want to bring that property goal sooner. I'm not going to go back to the UK every year. I might go back to the UK every second year. And we pulled that back. We pulled that, $7,500 travel budget maybe back down to say $500. $5,000 per year, which brings us in at about $450 per month. We're now saving nearly $2,000 per month towards that property. And if we look at the impact of that, we're now down, just over 3 years. So we've gone from just shy of 8 to just over 3 by reducing weekly spending by $200 and by reducing our travel budget from 7.5 down to 5.
Mm. Okay, well, that makes me feel a lot more positive about like yeah, goal. I think something I hear all the time, particularly in the initial consultations that we run, is like property feels so unattainable. So I just haven't started, but just getting
Mm.
the structure in there, you can see it actually is achievable. We just got to put the structures in and kind of change the habits a little bit.
Correct. So I'll come to structure in a moment, but I think it's also important to reference, like, in terms of what to do with that disposable income and, moving out of kind of advisor client mode, just to, talking to those that are on the call this evening. We've put some, I guess, options, for want of a better word, in terms of how to allocate the surplus income. And this is the challenging piece, right? It's about working out, how much do we save? How much do we put in the offset account? How much do we put towards paying down the mortgage? How much should we be investing in line with our future passive income goals? How much should we be contributing to super to reduce our tax, but also bolster up our retirement savings? So the key driver, the key purpose behind having structure with regards to our cash flow, is to give us more clarity around what we're going to do with the surplus, right? So this is a means to an end. Like, I don't care that Will spends $150 on beauty per month. I don't care that it's, $400 on clothes. The figure that I'm most interested in is how much Will feels he's comfortable with living on a week by week basis. And that figure, just to be really clear, it needs to be one that is realistic. And what I mean by that is, well, if we're working through this exercise and the previous figure was 820, we trialed 600 and we couldn't stick to it. We just kept going back to our savings. I would much prefer us just to increase it back from 600 to 700, as opposed to keeping it at 600 and, to be frank, just kidding ourselves and then just taking money from savings whenever we need to. It needs to be a figure that ensures that you can maintain the lifestyle that you're accustomed to, but it also needs to be a figure that you need to be mindful of. So each time you tap your card, your phone, your watch, whatever it is you tap to buy,
Yeah.
it's you're tapping and you're purchasing something that you genuinely care about, not just purchasing on a whim.
Maybe I think just on that point, maybe we'll come to this in a second, but the
Mm,
very just having weekly spending there was a new one to me, because I'm someone that just money comes in, I use a credit card and I just tap as I go and I pay that off at the end of the month. But by
mm.
what we're doing here is actually saying, okay, how much am I spending on a weekly basis? Why is that more beneficial than doing it over the course of a month, for example?
Great question. And here's some buckets that I prepared earlier. So let's pivot the conversation to structure. So what we've done through the spreadsheet is we're clear on income, we're clear on our expenses. We've now got more definitive numbers. So we're not guessing. We know what our bills are. We know what that amount is we're comfortable to spend on a weekly basis. What you're seeing here is a proposed structure. General in nature, obviously, this needs to be adapted based on your individual circumstances. But a structure that we've found works really well is having specific accounts for very specific purposes. If you Google or Chat GPT, what you'll often find is there's a lot of advice around percentages. Oh, you should spend X percent on bills, and you should spend X percent on travel, and you could spend X percent on weekly spending. Although that's a really good start, everyone has different priorities, right? Like, using your example, Will, like, if you're really focused on purchasing that property and you want to purchase that as soon as possible, then potentially you are going to pull back on that lifestyle travel bucket in order to then expedite the ability to purchase the property. A big conversation that we have is, how much is one willing to spend on a weekly basis versus how much do they want to spend on travel? Often people, this is a broad generalization, often people favor the travel. They're like, I want to keep that up at, the $7,500 figure, but I'm happy to pull back on the weekly, noting that the lifestyle's the priority. So from a structural perspective, what I'd be considering is having a cash account, and that's that centralized income account. So having your income go into an account, which then feeds various buckets for specific purposes. So if I was using your numbers, Will, that we just went through on the spreadsheet, what I'd be saying is we'd have an income account. I'd like to see that as a high interest savings account, and I'll come to why in a moment, but have that as a high interest savings account. then have an account for your fixed costs. So you've shared with me that your fixed costs are $3,500 on average on a monthly basis. So set a monthly transfer of 3.5 grand to that fixed cost account. That will cover all of your bills, regardless of whether they are weekly like the gym or annual like the car fee. It ensures that everything has been accounted for. Set it up, just have the direct debits coming out. Money goes in, money goes out. To be frank, you don't really need to monitor that account unless obviously that the bills were to change and adjust. Weekly spending, so really good call out. So I'd like to see you set up that transfer of $600 per week. And why on a weekly basis? To smooth out your cash flow. That $600 per week equates to about $2,800 over the course of the month. The risk of transferring $2,800 in a month, you have a blowout the first or second weeks, a few big Friday, Saturday nights, and then it's baked beans for week 3 and 4 of the month. That $600 per week creates that more consistent rhythm. The other element to that is if you know you're going to have a big week next week, it's a birthday or you're going away or whatever the case may be, the objective would be taper back this week. So, reduce how much you spend this week. The $600 will still drop into the account next week and you'll still have money left over from this week. Okay, so trying to smooth it out as much as possible. The other element to this, also pick a day of the week that works best for you. So what I mean by that is if you do your groceries on a Thursday night, as an example, set up the transfer from that income account to the spending account on a Wednesday. Why is that? You want the bulk of your funds sitting there for when you're going to spend that on arguably the one element within that weekly budget that's somewhat non-negotiable, which is the groceries. What we don't want to be doing is transferring the funds in on a Friday night, spending it all. We then do our groceries on, a Thursday night and we've spent all the cash and then we're like, okay, well, we just need to take from our savings because I've got to do the groceries. So transfer the funds the night before you're likely to do the groceries. So trying to build that into your lifestyle rhythm. The travel piece, you're going to spend the money. Again, don't just save it in the high interest savings account where your income is being paid into. Have that go into an account that's separate. You're going to spend it. We may as well account for it. Having it in a separate account also ensures that you have much more visibility in terms of what that's being spent on. So in your situation, when we're thinking about the property goal, acknowledging that that's a fairly short-term goal, the bulk of that surplus income is going to be saved. The beauty of this structure, and if you do have that income going straight into a high interest savings account, is that you then don't need to transfer those funds anywhere. The surplus income that you have, so the $2,000 that we ended up with, that will just remain in the account that you get paid into. And this also works really, really well for those that have variable incomes. So if you receive commissions or you receive bonuses or your income flow or you're at shift work and your income changes because you get overtime, etc. So rather than working out on a weekly or fortnightly or monthly basis, or how much did I earn and how much am I spending or how much do I transfer to my savings, just have your income go to the account where it's going to work the hardest. And that may be a high interest savings account for yourself, acknowledging, you're still working towards that first property. But if you've got an offset account, that could be your offset account, touching on where, again, that surplus income is going to work the hardest.
Okay, so just to clarify that point, Glenn, although there's a goals separate bucket to the income, and what we're saying is different accounts, if you've actually automated the structure between your fixed costs and your weekly spending, those can theoretically be the same bank account, essentially.
Correct. Yeah. So it is case by case, like everyone, different goals. Like if it's, working towards that passive income, we're going to have a separate bucket, which is an investment account. If it's looking to reduce your tax and, work towards a more comfortable retirement, there's going to be putting additional funds into superannuation, which is its separate bucket. if you've accumulated, a bit of credit card debt, if you've got a car loan and, the interest rate on that is quite high, that'll again be a separate bucket. But it's really about, the purpose of this cash flow exercise is to go through the spreadsheet so we know what's left over, and then based on your goals, making a proactive decision as to what you're doing with that disposable income and which appropriate buckets to go into.
Yeah. Okay. And my key takeaways just going through this is from the start where I was someone that money comes into one account and I just kind of tap a credit card. My homework would be open a couple of extra accounts for that structure because they now have different purposes. I then automate the ones that can be automated. And the only number I really have to worry about now is how much I'm spending every Wednesday to Wednesday, for example.
Exactly right. So $600 goes into the account, spend on whatever you want. Once it's gone, it's gone. You'll know if you don't touch anything else that $2,000 per month will accumulate in that high interest savings account where it's working the hardest. That's $24,000 over the course of the year. Again, as we kind of touched on earlier, you'll have that $80,000 deposit or a 10% deposit on that $800,000 property in 3.5 years' time, assuming no income, no pay rises, no changes, expenses, etc.
Okay, I think that's one of the key things now that, kind of stepping away from kind of the simulation is what we would typically see is the mindset starts to shift right on how we spend money because understanding now what my surplus is every month, I now understand the time frame of achieving that goal. So my
Yeah.
mindset starts to shift from it doesn't really matter what I spend to I know if I'm going over that 600 limit, then that time frame is being pushed out accordingly.
Yeah, so and will that there's a reason why we refer to it as a cash flow strategy as opposed to a budget. A budget feels very restrictive. A cash flow strategy feels much more, I guess, progressive. And it also, we do a lot of work with our members to change the behavior or the relationship with cash flow, moving away from, oh, I only need to spend $600 per week to, oh, if I do spend $600 per week, I'm going to be able to purchase that property in 3.5 years, or I'll have X amount in my investment portfolio, or I'll have, I will be completely debt free, or whatever the case may be.
Okay, I think I'd love to kind of transition this now that we've got the structures in, is to answer some of the typical frequently asked questions that people would then have after creating that. One of the crucial ones, maybe it's not for today, but be, okay, imagine I'm already in the property. Imagine I've already got the savings in the bank. I understand, what my surplus should go towards then.
So it does come back to the goal. So purchasing the property, a big goal for a lot of our members. Another big goal for a lot of our members is generating a certain level of passive income. So what is passive income? It's essentially income generated through investments as opposed to personal exertion, so work. An example would be rent from an investment property. If you've got rent coming through, that's a form of passive or investment income. If you're invested in shares, exchange traded funds, which won't go down that rabbit hole too much this evening, but you'll be able to generate a certain level of income from that. Having a clear cash flow strategy also gives us clear insight as to what a good passive income goal might be. And the reason I reference that is, passive income, great, but how much? How much do we need in order to maintain the lifestyle that we've become accustomed to? And if I reference your numbers, Will, just at a high level, we've got $3,500 of bills, $600 a week of day-to-day expenses. So let's just use round figures and say it's about $2,500 over the course of the month. So that takes us to $6,000, and then about $500 per month on travel. So arguably, if you had $6,500 worth of investment or passive income, you could retire tomorrow and maintain the lifestyle that you've become accustomed to.
Yeah. Okay.
What you look so happy about that for? Well, you like your job.
I love it. Okay, so coming back, I think quite a common question that people on the listening in might have is, what if I manage my money with my partner? How does this structure that we've just set up?
Got to be a team. You've got to be a team, be a boss, date a boss, build an empire. You've got to be on the same page from day one, acknowledging that in every relationship there's always one that's more across the numbers than the other. That's okay. But if you're telling your partner, oh, we need to reduce our spending from $800 to $600 without giving clarity as to the impact or why, that's not going to be very meaningful or have much purpose behind it. Whereas if you say, hey, if we reduce it from 800 to 600, we're going to be able to purchase that investment property that we've been wanting to do for so long in 3 years. How does this is the impact that it's going to have? That's going to be so much more meaningful, and it's going to mean that when the two of you are sticking to that 600 as an example, you both know why that's the case. Just more broadly on that, just from a structural perspective. So in terms of the day-to-day, all the bills are kind of, if you're in a relationship living together, the bills are kind of just are what they are, all kind of lumped in as one. In terms of the day-to-day spending, some of our members just choose to have the one account, money goes in, spend it on whatever you want. Others choose to split it. So they might say, all right, we're spending $800 a week and we're going to put $400 into each of our individual accounts. The third option is some of our members might go, all right, we're going to put $400 in a joint account on a weekly basis for all of our groceries and joint expenses if we go out together, and then $200 into our individual accounts. So again, I don't care how it's split as long as it's the $800 per week. How it's sliced and diced does not impact the surplus, which is the key to working towards those goals.
Okay. Just to come back to something you said there, getting on the same page since day one. I'm assuming you don't mean I should be managing my money with my partner on the first date. When typically, is a question we get all the time, is when does it actually make sense to combine a structure?
Well, if it was love at first sight, then go all in. But what we see is typically when people move in together is that's when finances start to merge. The easiest way to start that is having a joint account for your bills, so your household bills. So you each contribute a certain amount to that account to cover all of the household bills. The travel and the weekly spending might still be separate initially, but the bills is acknowledging that they're all negotiable, acknowledging the majority of them are joint. That's a really nice place to start.
And as a kind of final tips and tricks there, what are the biggest mistakes that people make when they initially go through that journey and set up that structure?
Biggest mistake is thinking about your example, we said the numbers said 820. We said, let's give 600 a crack. We say we transfer 600 and then you just go take the extra $100 or $200 per week from saving. It completely negates the purpose of putting the structure in place at all. And all of the projections around when you're able to purchase that property, arguably reduce or have less kind of validity. The other element is people don't account for things that they should be, and they know they're going to spend money on. So travel is a very obvious one. All of our members love travel. They might be saving for a house, putting away, $2,000 per month, but then they go to Europe and then just take money out of it. If you know you're going to spend money on travel, that's okay, but have that as a separate bucket so you're clear in terms of, yes, if I put money aside for travel, then this is the impact on the property goal without kind of giving ourselves false hope.
Okay, so be realistic and then be consistent, as we go through dipping in and out. Those are the key kind of takeaways.
Correct.
Cool. Let's go to a little Q&A. And guys, if you do have questions, keep popping in there. Brittany's got one that says, or do you want to tackle that one, Glenn, and read that out and go?
Sure. So Brittany, if there's time, with high interest savers accounts having your income go into this, I'm paid fortnightly, so my incentive saver with St. George, if payments come out, does it not decrease or cancel out the interest, or is that bank specific? Great question. I'm not 100% sure about this particular product, but it is a very good call out. Which, coming to your comment earlier around mistakes, is one I often say. Ensure, regardless of whether you're using St. George, Incentive Saver, ING, Ubank, Macquarie, whatever the account is, make sure that you understand the requirements in order to actually receive the interest rate that's advertised. A number of these banks do require your balance to grow by a certain amount. A number of these banks will, require the balance to grow by a certain amount. You have to, tap your card a certain number of times with different banks. So just be really clear that if you're using a particular bank, you understand how to in fact receive that advertised interest rate. So I can't comment on that particular product, but a very good call out, because there's plenty of people out there with some of the banks that I've mentioned that are unlikely receiving the interest that's advertised.
Sure. And just in that example, if that was the case and she'd done what we'd said there, would put the high interest saver as your income, what we'd probably do is just set the high interest saver as a separate goals account so that you weren't
Yeah,
taking money out, but it was just going in.
correct. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think that brings us towards the end of our time. Nicely on the 45-minute mark there, team. Glenn, thanks so much for talking me through that. It's natural at this point, and after you go through this exercise, team, to have quite a few questions. We obviously don't have them today, but please feel free to use us as a sounding board. If you are interested in taking this a step further, then the first step with Fox and Hare is a 45-minute to an hour consultation deep dive with myself, where we talk through everything relative to your own situation and if advice might be the right step for you. So that QR code will take you to my diary, and I've just popped a link in the chat there if you would like to book in some time. There are some slots. We're quite busy at the minute, but there are a couple over the coming weeks. So I hope you've all enjoyed the chat today. Glenn, I've really enjoyed it. It's been eye-opening for me. My key takeaways here are that structure and visibility are key in order to kind of be hitting those longer term goals. And also small changes on a weekly basis add up massively over time.
Totally. Cash flow is the enabler.
Yeah.
Lean
Okay.
in.
And the foundation for all the other things like investing, how much money to put in my
Yeah.
super, you can't answer those questions without understanding where your money is going and how much you need, etc.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Liam. Chat soon,
Thanks,
guys.
see you all soon.
See
Bye
ya.
bye.
Bye.